Hello there, we're back for another episode of learning, realizations, corrected notions, and everything that comes in between. For today's video, we're going to start with the first part of Chapter 2 in Ethics entitled The Moral Agent. Okay, before anything else, let me take you for a walk through to the moral agent. Okay, this chapter is further subdivided into two parts. The first part is culture and moral behavior, and the second part is moral agent, developing virtue as habit. Of course, in this chapter, we're going to talk about what culture is and its importance in moral behavior. I know that I've been talking a lot about culture lately, especially in one of your subjects, purposive communication, but at least in this video, we're going to have a different take about it because we're discussing how it actually affects your sense of morality or sense of right and wrong depending on your varying, your distinct, your different cultural backgrounds. Okay, so all of you should be able to explain the influence of Filipino culture and describe the elements of moral development at the end of this chapter. Okay, so for the following slides, I have a set of pictures which would show how vast, how varying, how distinct, and how amazing different cultures are just to begin our discussion. Alright, so for the first picture, I have here a symbol, and I don't know if you have already seen it or if you are familiar with it. And it actually has a variation here in the second slide. Okay, so it's just the same with the first picture, it's just a variation. So have you seen anything like this before? What do you think does this mean? Alright, so this symbol is actually called a swastika, and it could be found throughout the world including India, Greece, and Egypt. Okay, what does swastika mean? It could mean eternity, harmony, balance of opposites, and protection from evil. Alright, for the second picture, what do you think of her? Okay, why is her head or her face a little far from her shoulders, and what are these blinks around her neck? Alright. Okay, this is actually a part of the culture of African tribe called Ndebele. These elongated necks symbolizes first marriage, second beauty, third status as they can afford to buy the rings. Alright, I know that as you're listening to this video and as you're viewing this picture, you might find it a little absurd or it might not pass through your standards or your sense of beauty, but this is actually the point of our topic. What is acceptable in your part or what is not acceptable in your end could actually be acceptable and more than acceptable, such as they were preferred, acknowledged, and honored in another culture. So it's actually the point of our topic for this first part and chapter 2, how cultures affect your sense of morality or sense of right and wrong. Okay? So the third picture we have here a lady who has a very significant small waist, because a small waist is considered beautiful and fashionable. Okay, it might be true, but not as significant as this one. Okay, not as small as this one. Of course, everybody wants a small waist or a sexy bodily figure, but not as small as this, right? But this is actually what is acceptable in other cultures, right? Okay, how about this one? The first time I encountered this picture was about 8 years ago. Today is 2022 and 8 years ago was what year? Do the math. Yeah, 2014. And this is a culture being practiced in China. And I think you'll be surprised once you come across the meaning of this picture. So let's talk about it. This is called foot binding, and it is a practice done by the wealthy in some areas of China. Okay, this being practiced, take note, by the wealthy group of people in China, because having bound feet symbolizes wealth, as women with bound feet do not work. See that? They have bound feet because they do not work and because they are wealthy, because the family could provide. Okay, this also symbolizes beauty. The ideal foot size is 3 to 3.5 inches. So if you have like a regular foot or a foot that is not distorted, then you're not beautiful. What is beautiful is having a distorted foot, or distorted feet, or feet which measure 3 to 3.5 inches. Can you believe that? Alright, in this picture, look at the scars at her back. The scars means beauty. Once again, beauty, strength or courage, family honor, and protection from death. This is comparable to, I don't know if you have, or if you can recall, a fact in history wherein warriors would have their body tattooed or marked as a symbol of a war that is won, or a symbol of their victory. So if they're in the battlefield and they were able to win that war, their prize comes in tattoos. So they're gonna print their body because it's a symbol that they won a battle. So these tattoos would mean their courage, their bravery, their battle tactics, their war strategies, and it's just the same as this one, family honor, right? Protection from death, strength, courage, and beauty. So, noong unang panahon, kapag wala kang tattoo, walang print ang katawan mo, or walang mga ganito, then you're weak. You've never gone into a battle, or you've never protected your family or your friends or yourself alone. Diba? Okay. And the information that I have just shared is actually a culture here in the Philippines, alright? Warriors getting their bodies tattooed as a symbol of their victory. Okay, what have you noticed about the pictures? Think about what they represent in their cultures. Okay, that things we think are weird are accepted in their culture. Okay, another one, every culture has its own traditions and symbols. Where's this? Another picture. His name is Ganesh, and he's a deity or god in Hinduism. He's a remover of obstacles. And how about this one? His name is Jesus Christ. He's the creator of Christianity. Or someone who's being praised in Christian faith, right? Okay, I wasn't the one who prepared this PowerPoint. Okay, who do we know more? Okay, which one of the two religious symbols do we recognize more? Why is it so? If I'd say the second picture, the answer is obvious, because the believers in the second picture outnumber the believers of the first picture, right? So it's as simple as that. Although there are countries which are believers of the first one than of the second one, right? But here in the Philippines, I'd say that what is more familiar with us is the second one, because of Roman Catholicism. Alright, brought to us by the Spaniards, right? 333 years ago. Oh no, it wasn't 333 years ago, but we were colonized by the Spaniards for 333 years, right? Okay, so the first concept here in this chapter class is what we call ethnocentrism. And what is it? It is the tendency to believe that one's ethnic or cultural group is more important or superior than others' ethnic or cultural groups. They also judge other cultures' behavior, language, customs, and religion in relation to their own. This attitude may produce hostility, aggression, and violence towards the other cultures. I have cited an example about ethnocentrism in purposive communication, right? And it's just funny because the example is too personal and I couldn't share here in this video. Okay, but the idea of ethnocentrism is that, for example, you're from La Union and then you happen to marry a wife that living or residing in Pangasinan, and you live with her family, but you're so closed, or you firmly believe that the Ilocano culture is a lot better or is the best Okay, better than the Pangasinan culture, and so you're not ready to learn the cultures of Pangasinan, or yeah, you're very close, you're not open to learning the cultures of Pangasinan, such as its language, its beliefs, its practices, because you believe nga na ang may pinakamagandang culture ay yung kultura mo, and that is why you're often called as an outcast or an outsider, kasi nga you are not assimilating, you're not making yourself similar with the people belonging to the culture that you are currently in. You're not making yourself similar, you're not uniting with them, such as in because we have assimilation, we also have integration, right? And accommodation and multiculturalism. So there are actually 5 ways on how culture can be adapted, and among the 4 ways that I've mentioned, you're not practicing either one of them. In fact, what you are practicing is the 5th means of cultural adaptation. It is separation. And ethnocentrism is actually a concept under separation, wherein you do not recognize other culture than yours. You believe that your culture is the best among the rest, right? And what do you think? What would this attitude lead you to? Because hindi ka nakikisama, saan pupunta yun? Of course, hostility, aggression, and violence, right? Right? Because the people in that particular culture will consider you as an outcast or as an outsider. At kapag ini-insist mo na yung kultura mo ang maganda, syempre hindi rin papayag yung majority, because they are the dominant culture than you are, kasi mag-isa mo lang. Alright. How does this relate to what we just learned? Why is this important? Okay, the concept of ethnocentrism is very important, and I think the lesson for all of us is to not practice it, right? Or to practice it sa tamang lugar. Or it's really okay if you're very proud of your culture, but you also have to learn how to adapt, right? What is better is if you can adapt. Okay, what is this picture saying? This could mean a lot. With my students in SS1B, this means a motivation for them to get 3 or higher than to fail the subject. Okay, how about for others? Okay to a Westerner, money to a Japanese, 0 to the French, and insulting to the Turks and Brazilians. So imagine yourself traveling to Brazil, and then you did this to a random person you meet, or who pass by your side and on the street, in the street, diba? He'll get offended kasi nga this means an insult in Brazil and in Turkey. Okay, 0 to the French and money to Japanese because of the circle. And to the Americans, this means alright, okay, or I also remember that this is also a sign we made to mean basic, ganon. Dahil ang yabang-yabang namin sa aming degree program when we were undergraduate students, ang ibig sabihin ng hand gesture na ito or symbol na ito para sa grupo namin ay basic. Like if we're given a task or a challenge by our professors, we do this with one another, basic, ganon. Okay, culture is an essential part of people's daily lives. It influences their views, their values, their humor, their hopes, their loyalties, and their worries and fears. If you hail from Montreal or Morocco, if you are Hindu, Jewish, or Catholic, if you are LGBT, if you're hyphenated African, Chinese, or Ukrainian, if you are bi or multicultural, culture has affected you. Acknowledging this when you're working with people and building relationships with them, it helps to have some perspectives and understanding of the cultural heritages and perspectives people bring with them to our interactions. Okay, the most important point in studying this chapter is that we are familiarizing ourselves with different cultures. We are we equip ourselves with this knowledge, the knowledge of different cultures, for us to be able to not be so ignorant when we are communicating, especially interculturally, right? When you're talking with someone of different race, of different color, of different language, of different preferences and beliefs, it's important that you armor yourselves with a lot of knowledge about culture for you not to offend. And it's actually one of the many do's when it comes to intercultural communication. Competence in intercultural communication. Recognizing the individual and cultural differences of people you are supporting is the first step in being able to tailor support and create culturally and psychologically safe environments, both in terms of professional settings and in a teaching and learning context as well. If you do not understand your clients' cultural backgrounds, you won't be able to meet their needs effectively. And in business transactions, for example, one of the best ways to lure a partner or a client is to know his or her culture. And in that way, you'll be able to, let's say, seduce him or convince him into unlocking the deal with you, right? Okay, concept of culture. What is culture? Again, culture is the socially transmitted knowledge shared by some group of people. Okay, everything that people have, think, and do as members of society. Okay, the non-biological means of human adaptation, and they are made up of material objects, ideas, values, and attitudes, and pattern ways of behaving. Okay, not to mention the beliefs here, including beliefs in deity or superstitions. They are all part of cultures. I remember a discussion in propulsive communication when I pointed out that superstition is indeed a part of one's culture, because an absurd belief can be unique to a certain group of people. Kagaya nung paniniwala ng mga Pilipino na kapag nagwalis ka sa gabi ay mamalasin ka or hindi papasok ang pera. Hindi naman yan pinapaniwalaan ng Westerners or other countries, kasi anytime naman silang naglilinis doon. They don't care, diba? Ano pa? Seeing a black cat actually is not unique to the Filipino people, kasi the black in general, yung color black can actually mean death or curse, not only to us Filipinos but also to other nations. Okay, in 1873, Edward Taylor, sometimes called the father of anthropology, introduced the concept of culture as an explanation of the differences among human societies. Taylor defined culture as that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, law, morals, custom, and any other capabilities acquired by man as a member of society. He defined anthropology as the study of culture. The only thing that is true to all of us is what we call culture. So the only concept that is true to all of us is our differences. Culture is learned, is shared, colors perceptions, is out of awareness, shapes beliefs, it affects behavior, it is contradictory, it is variable, it is subject to influence, and it is dynamic or evolving. Okay, what the people believed in the past generations may no longer be carried over to the next ones, as we are living in a digital world, or how the technology has advanced and has exposed us to reality and to science, kaya hindi na natin pinapaniwalaan yung mga pinagsasabi ng ating mga ancestors kasi exposed na tayo sa katotohanan, sa science, to an empirical evidence kaysa yung mga sabi-sabi lang, diba? Okay, assumptions of culture. Culture is based on symbols. Symbol is something that is verbal or non-verbal within a culture that comes to stand for something else. Symbol is anything that could mean different or in a deeper sense. Okay, language is most important symbol because it is the primary means by which culture is transmitted from one generation to another. Obviously, it is only through language that culture can be passed through from one generation to another. So without language, cultures couldn't be taught by our ancestors to their grandsires, or grandchildren, ganyan. Our grandsires wouldn't be able to teach us our rich culture without language. It is a symbolic replacement of meanings for meanings. Okay, examples: we have wedding rings, crucifixes, and red dragon. Culture is learned, right? We learn what the symbols are for, not born with cultures. We learn it from our parents, surroundings, and friends through enculturation. Okay, I like to emphasize this one. Culture is learned, it is not innate. Culture is not automatic from the moment that you are born. It is learned. Culture is learned. Alright? Wearing a bahag, for example, doesn't come automatically upon your birth. You weren't wearing bahag the moment that you were born, pero you only learn how to wear a bahag because of your observation in your surroundings, or because your parents taught you how, because it is what you see from the people around you. Okay, so we have a concept called enculturation, and what does this mean? It is a process by which a society's culture is transmitted from generation to another. Okay, so when you pass the culture from you to the next, it's called enculturation. Okay, acquiring culture after we are born. Everyone acquires culture and enculturation. So acquiring culture, it is enculturation. Children learn about their culture through observation of their parents, teachers, friends, and through television even. Okay, learn correct value systems and appropriate modes of behavior, and it can be seen as a plan or recipe. Okay, plan or recipe because it's something to be followed. Okay, not really step by step, but followed through observation, right? Okay, through implicit or explicit teaching and learning. Okay, another one, culture is shared. We share the same meanings for symbols to be a part of culture. It's a way of thinking and interacting. Okay, it's very self-explanatory. It is shared, just as how the American people or how the Koreans share their culture with us. Okay, how they present themselves in the global village or in the global arena, how they introduce their modes of dressing, and then the Filipino people copy them. Okay, culture is shared. There is a variability in the sharing of culture. First, age variation. So we have generation gaps. Sex variation. Males and females are different. And subculture is a system of values and beliefs that are different from mainstream. The success varies from society to society. That's why one of the assumptions of culture is that it's not only shared, it's not only learned, but it's actually also multifaceted. When we say multifaceted, in one culture as a whole, there are many cultures inside. Okay, maraming mukha ang kultura. Okay, example, the practice of pagmamano is applicable to all Filipino people, but wearing bahag is not applicable to all. It's only applicable to one ethnicity or one group of people here in the Philippines. Ayun, so multifaceted, maraming mukha ang kultura. Okay, next. culture is integrated. All aspects of culture function as an interrelated whole. If one part of a culture changes, it tends to affect another part. Example, most American women in the 1950s expected to have domestic careers as homemakers and mothers. Today, college women expect to get jobs when they graduate. As women enter the workforce, their attitudes toward marriage, family, and children change. Changes include later marriages, increased divorce rates, and daycares. Okay, of course, the assumptions to gender roles change as we now live in a digital world, or somewhere technology has advanced massively that they expose us to the facts and to concepts such as liberty, freedom. Syempre hindi na lang tayo papayag na kapag babae ka, ito lang yung mga rules mo, diba? Very empowered na tayo ngayon. Okay, that is how culture is integrated. Okay, culture function as an interrelated whole. Okay, and if one part of culture changes, it tends to affect another part. So, kapag may nagbago sa isang kultura, maapektuhan na magdo-domino effect na ang mga iba kasi nga integrated ito, interrelated. Okay. Okay, next, culture is adaptive. Adaptation means the way living pups relate to their environment so they can survive and reproduce. So humans are the only animals that mainly depend on their culture for survival. Most other animals use anatomical or physiological mechanisms as a means to survive. Okay, not all cultural behaviors are adaptive. Some are neutral and some are maladaptive. Instance, poaching endangered animals to support cultural materials such as jewelry can be seen as maladaptive, or automobiles are great but pollute environment. Okay, avenues for cultural adaptation, we have organizational, ordering of groups, kinship, family, and marriage. And the second one, ideological, beliefs such as religion. Okay, another assumption of culture is that it is dynamic. Okay, how cultures are dynamic is because where's the next slide? Or they are ever changing, non-static, referred to as cultural evolution. As we all say, change is the only permanent thing in this world. So everything is actually dynamic because everything changes, right? Not only cultures. Okay, cultures are dynamic, they are ever changing, non-static. Just as like how we explained that culture is integrated, wherein when one changes, then the others will also follow because they are integrated. They will act in a domino effect. So here, cultures are dynamic, nagbabago. Many cultures today are very different from what they were years ago. Also, what makes a culture dynamic is because cultures are overlapping. Our own culture, such as our language, could actually be overlapped with other cultures, such as when we were colonized by the Spaniards for 333 years. Our Filipino language was actually not a pure Filipino anymore dahil maraming salita na Espanyol ang origin ang nakahalo sa ating Filipino dictionary, yung recognized and standardized na Filipino language natin. It's because of the fact that we were colonized nga. So, sa tagal ba naman ng panahon na yon, it's very impossible that our ancestors were not able to learn the language. To give you an example, yung kutsarita ninyo, yung kutsara, yung compadre, yung perdona, yung ora mismo, yung kompanyero, yung cariño, yung senyora. Ayan, akala ninyo mga Filipino words or Pangasinan words, but they're actually Spanish words. Culture change can come from outside, okay, domination of other culture, or inside, women entering workforce. Ayan, yung sinasabi ko, domination of other culture. For example, we are being greatly exposed now to Korean culture through their movies, yan, okay, through their vlogs in YouTube, okay, through the media, in short, diba? Kaya nga, ang dami-dami ngayon ang nagsusuot ng crop tops. It's because we copy the trend, or we follow the trend that is being set by the Koreans. So the next generations here in the Philippines would think that wearing crop top is a part of Filipino culture, pero hindi nila alam na it's a trend started by the Koreans and not by the Filipinos, diba? Para naging part na lang siya ng kultura natin dahil halos lahat na ay nagpa-practice nito. And it's because of this one, the third point, that culture change can come from outside because of the domination of other culture, right? Okay, wearing of pants na waistline na nasa waistline, yung high waist na pants natin. Sa tingin ko, it's a Western practice. Okay, cultural change by invention and diffusion. What do we mean by invention? It's something that is internal, so new thing or idea. Okay, so cultures are dynamic, or they are changing because of new things or ideas that are brought up or that pops up. Yung mga nagsisilabasan ng mga bago internally. Okay, and then diffusion, opposite of invention, external naman to, spreading of cultural elements from one culture to another. So, parang yung example ko kanina, diffusion yun, kasi wearing crop top is from another culture, from another country, being introduced here in the Philippines. That's diffusion. Yung invention naman, no, internal, an Ilocos culture can be adapted by the Pangasinenses. So, I think that's internal. Or, the best thing actually here is, I'm not really sure kung yung diffusion at external na tinatawag natin dito ay like within the country versus cultures from outside, or yung sa isang place lang mismo. For example, kapag sa Pangasinan, may internal kapag may new idea lang, may bagong practice ang mga Pangasinenses, so that's invention. Pero kapag yung inadapt ng Pangasinense na from Ilocano, I'm not really sure kung diffusion na yun kasi external na from Pangasinan. Or would this mean na dahil Pilipino pa rin naman yung Ilocano, invention pa rin siya kapag inadapt ng mga Pangasinenses? We'll have to confirm that. How does culture influence or define moral behavior? Culture as an influence of moral behavior takes the nurture side of the argument. Culture looks at the totality of any given society's beliefs, systems, laws, morals, practices, language, and attitudinal variables, which makes people unique from others. Okay. As you know, it is transmitted from one generation to the other. What happens when you are groomed in the ways of a particular culture? You start acting and behaving in ways that are seen as appropriate to such a culture. Kasi nga, para may sense of belongingness ka, ginagawa mo yung mga practices na ginagawa ng mga tao na nakapaligid sa'yo kasi yun yung katanggap-tanggap. So, kapag may ginawa ka na taliwas or deviating from the practices of the people around you, then you will be regarded as someone that is not acceptable, or someone that is deviant or outcast or an outsider, and you wouldn't want that. Kaya naman, kung ano yung ginagawa mo ay nakapattern lang sa kung anong ginagawa ng mga tao na kabilang sa particular na kultura. Okay? So your dress sense, grooming, language, belief system, and attitude become molded to fit into that society, which makes you become accepted by them. Hence, culture plays a big role in determining how an individual behaves in any given environment. Kaya naman, totoo or indeed na ang kultura ay napakalaki ng kanyang ginagampanan in determining how you, for example, as an individual, behaves in any given environment. So, kung ano yung nakasanayan mo, kung ano yung naimulat sa'yo na tama, ina-apply mo yan saan ka man dalhin. Whether you are inside your cultural group or you are outside it. Kasi yun na yung nakasanayan mo, yun yung naipamulat sa'yo na tama. So, yun yung pinapractice mo. Kaya naman, yung kultura mong yan, dala-dala mo, at nakaka-apekto yan sa kung paano mo tignan ang mga bagay-bagay in your own lens, in your own cultural lens, yung background na pinanggalingan mo. Okay, just to give you a very superficial example, doesn't have to be concerning a sense of right and wrong. Perhaps a preference lang or what is a better practice. I've noticed that lots of Ilocanos only have coffee and pastries for their breakfast. Pero here in Pangasinan, while marami rin naman na nagpapandesal at kape lang, sa tingin ko mas marami pa rin naman yung nag-aalmusal ng kanin at ng ulam. Okay, but in the Ilocano culture, I think that most of them, like majority of them, prefer coffee and pastry for their breakfast instead of rice and a viand. Okay, so in relation to that example na sinabi ko, I will just make a point on how my culture as a Pangasinense affected my behavior when I lived in La Union because of my undergraduate studies. So, syempre, dahil nasanay ako dito sa Pangasinan na nag-aalmusal ng kanin ng ulam, nung pagdating ko ng La Union, there was difficulty in adjusting or in adapting kasi mas prefer ko yung nakasanayan ko. Alright? Okay, but eventually, because of the idea of cultural adaptation, that I have to somewhat make myself similar with the people around me in that particular culture, I have to adapt it. I have to practice what they are practicing, what the people around me are practicing, or what they believe or what they see as something that is more acceptable. Okay? So, morality differs in every society and is a convenient term for socially approved habits as it varies from culture to culture. Alright. Okay, I think we are continuing with this one. Cultural relativism as another concept in the first part of chapter 2. Let's take a look at this one. Any part of a culture must be viewed from within its cultural context, not that of the observer. So this was first formulated by Franz Boas at the turn of the century. No culture should be judged by the standards of another. Related to the ethnocentrism, the supposed superiority of one's own group. Okay, so here in cultural relativism, it's telling us not to judge any culture as something that is more or less standard than your own culture, because as the point that we are making from the beginning of this discussion, that all cultures are unique, there are varying cultures, and you cannot really tell that your culture is better than the other or theirs is worse than yours. So walang ganon. It's the concept of cultural relativism. So specific example of this would be studies of the Eskimo. Traditionally, if an elderly member was unable to keep up with the group, they were left in the cold to die. I think this is a practice in Japan, not really sure, pero ang naalala ko, ang top of mind ko ay the country Japan. Okay, we would think it is cruel and heartless, but in the eyes of the Eskimo, it is seen as someone unable to support themselves and a detriment to the whole group. Okay, don't be confused with this class, with this type of culture, kasi meron pa rin naman tayong tinatawag na universal standard. At doing this practice is tantamount to like killing the person. Hindi mo lang siya implicit or explicitly pinatay, pero pag iniwan mo siya doon, alam mo namang mamamatay siya, right? At sa universal truth natin, or concept of right and wrong natin, yung universal truths natin, alam naman natin na bawal pumatay, right? Pero okay, for the sake of for the sake of this one, for the concept of cultural relativism, ang ibig sabihin nito ay itong practice na to ay maaaring hindi ka tanggap-tanggap para sa iyo, pero wala kang karapatan na i-judge yun kasi nga ito yung katanggap-tanggap para doon sa mga taong nagpa-practice nito. At ano ba ang dahilan nila? Matanda na yung tao, wala na siyang pakinabang, kaya wala na siyang kakayahan na suportahan yung pamilya niya, instead siya ay isang pabigat na, kaya pupunta na lamang siya doon. Okay, it sounds rude, right? Pero yun nga, wala tayong karapatan na i-judge yung ganitong klaseng culture as suggested to us by the concept of cultural relativism. Pero again, don't be confused kasi i-discuss ko rin naman sa inyo yung concept of universality later on. May mga beliefs tayo or may mga rules tayo or laws tayo na dapat ay tanggap ng lahat or majority would agree. Okay, so kaya nga tinawag na universal because almost all people, majority of all people agree to these rules. So like it's a certain factor, it's certainly true. It is certainly right. Kaya dapat lahat ay susunod, parang ganon. First example is bawal pumatay, tama. Okay, cultural relativism in relation to morality. Different cultures have different moral codes. The key to understanding morality. Okay, there are no universal moral truths. The customs of different societies are all that exists. Ayun na yung sinasabi ko sa inyo. So, dito sa cultural relativism, wala yung universal moral truths. Kasi nga, kahit anumang culture yan, gaano man kasama sa assessment mo or sa mata mo, wala ka pa rin karapatan na i-judge yan kasi nga maaaring yung pinakamasama sa mata mo ay pinakamabuti sa mata nila. Okay, again and again, discuss ko itong universal moral truth separate from cultural relativism. Okay, to call a custom correct or incorrect would imply that we can judge the custom by some independent standard of right and wrong, but no such standard exists. Every standard is culture-bound. Okay, paulit-ulit na, ang iisa lang ang punto ng cultural relativism, lahat ng kultura ay may karapatan na i-insist yung kanila as right. Okay? Na tama. Okay, the right way is the way which the ancestors use and which has been handed down. So, ang tama sa cultural relativism ay yung tama para sa mga grupo ng tao na nagpa-practice nun, na gumagawa nun. That is all that matters. It doesn't matter if the people not practicing it consider it as something that is absurd or something that is a crime. So, walang ganun. So, in cultural relativism, tama para sa mga tao na gumagawa nun ang ginagawa nila. Okay, the notion of right is in the folkways. It is not outside of them, of independent origin and brought to test them. In the folkways, whatever is right. This is because they are traditional and therefore contain in themselves the authority of the ancestral ghosts. When we come to the folkways, we are at the end of our analysis. So, end of argument, tama yan dahil tama para sa kanila. Okay, this is by sociologist William Graham Sumner. Okay, cultural relativism says, in effect, that there is no such thing as universal truth in ethics. There are only the various cultural codes and nothing more. Okay, 5 tenets of cultural relativism. We have, first, different societies have different moral codes. Second, the moral code of a society determines what is right within that society. That is, if the moral code of a society says that a certain action is right, then that action is right at least within that society. There is no objective standard that can be used to judge one society's code as better than another's. There are no moral truths that hold for all people at all times. So, it's like walang rubric or walang standards. Wala kang basis para sabihin mo na mali yung sa kanila. Because the only thing that is being considered here is only the people or practicing that certain belief or that certain practice that makes it acceptable or correct. So, kung outside ka ng kultura nila, then wala. Wala kang dapat sabihin or wala kang say sa kultura na iyon. The moral code of our own society has no special status, but it is but one among many. It is arrogant for us to judge other cultures. We should always be tolerant of them. Okay, these 5 propositions may seem to go together, but they are independent of one another, meaning that some of them may be true even while others are false. Indeed, 2 of the propositions appear to be inconsistent with each other. The second says that right and wrong are determined by the norms of society. The 5th says that one should always be tolerant of other cultures. Okay, let's go back to the first and second tenets being referred here. Different societies have different moral codes. Okay, the moral code of a society determines what is right within that society. That is, if the moral code of society says that a certain action is right, an action is right, at least within that society. Okay, I think it's just the same with the last one. Kasi sabi naman niya, within that society. So, it's the same with telling na one should always be tolerant of other cultures. Kasi nga, kung hindi ka kasama doon sa society na yun, then wala kang say or wala kang karapatan para husgahan sila. So, only the people within the culture can dictate whether or not their practice is correct. But what if the norms of one society favor intolerance? For example, when the Nazi army invaded Poland on September 1, 1939, thus beginning World War II, this was an intolerant action of the First Order. But what if it conformed to Nazi ideals? Cultural relativists, it seems, cannot criticize the Nazis for being intolerant if all they're doing is following their own moral code. Given that cultural relativists take pride in their tolerance, it would be ironic if their theory actually supported the intolerance of warlike societies. However, their theory need not do that. Kaya ngayon na-emphasize ko sa inyo class na meron pa rin tayong tinatawag na universal code or universal truth. I-discuss natin yun separately kasi hindi ngayon tenet ng cultural relativism. So, walang paniniwala ang cultural relativism sa universal truth. Pero doon papasok ang conflict. Kasi paano nga kung sa isang particular na grupo, ang tama sa kanila ay pumatay, pero sa isang particular na grupo ay hindi tama na pumatay. So, doon na papasok ang universal truth natin. Kasi dapat mayroong mga certain rules or laws na applicable para sa lahat to avoid these conflicts. Okay? To properly understand, cultural relativism holds that the norms of a culture reign supreme within the bounds of the culture itself. Thus, once the German soldiers entered Poland, they become bound by the norms of Polish society, norms that obviously excluded the mass slaughter of an innocent Poles. When in Rome, the old saying goes, do as the Romans do. Okay, cultural relativists agree. But when you go to another culture, please do not do what you are doing kasi nasa ibang kultura ka na nga, yung practice mo ay maaring hindi acceptable sa grupo na pinuntahan mo. Alright. So, I think that ends our discussion for the first part of chapter 2. I have your group exercise. I will just cue this one in MS Teams at ipapaliwanag ko na lang din kung paano. Okay? So, goodbye. Hope you learned a thing or two in our discussion for today. And I wish to hear from you soon in our face-to-face meeting. Goodbye.